Hello, boys and girls. Today we are going to be focusing on comparing fractions with the same numerator. Let's just think about the parts of a fraction. If you see the fraction 3/4, what would the 3 represent in the fraction? If you said the numerator, you're absolutely correct. What would the 4 represent? The denominator. The numerator tells the specific parts of the whole, and the denominator tells us how many parts of the whole are in total. So let's review. What is comparing numbers or fractions? Comparing is when we use symbols to see if a number or fraction is greater, less than, or equal to another number or fraction. These are the symbols that we do use when comparing numbers or fractions. First symbol is the less than symbol. The second symbol is the greater than symbol. And then we have the equal symbol to show a comparison between numbers and fractions. We're going to take a little bit of time to watch an Envisions video on 3-4, which is a section in Envisions titled Comparing Fractions with the Same Numerator.
How can you compare fractions with the same numerator? Having the same numerator is a clue you can work with.
Don't forget to look for clues. Clues lead you to answers.
2 scarves are the same size. One scarf is 5/6 orange, and the other scarf is 5/8 orange. Which is less, 5/6 or 5/8? Find out which fraction is less, 5/6 or 5/8. What is important to know before you compare fractions?
Okay, boys and girls, so we're going to stop right here. As you can see, there are 2 scarves. We know that a portion of each scarf is orange or purple, but the focus, of course, is orange. We know for the first scarf, 5/6 of the scarf is orange. We know that for the second scarf, 5/8 of the scarf is orange. So if you look at the 2 scarves, what do you think is important to know before we compare these fractions? What needs to be, what would need to happen if we were comparing models representing fractions? Okay, well, first off, as you can see, these are both representing whole scarves. If you notice, each of the scarves are the same length. To accurately compare fractions, you have to make sure that the wholes are the same length or the same size.
You need to be sure that the size of the whole is the same. How can you find 5/6 and 5/8 of the scarf? What you show. Use fraction strips to reason about the size of 5/6 compared to the size of 5/8. Divide the scarf into 8 equal parts to find 5/8. Each part is 1/8 of the whole. Show 5 of the 1/8 strips. Then divide the scarf into 6 equal parts. Each part is 1/6 of the whole. Show 5 of the 1/6 strips. Which is less, 5/6 or 5/8?
Select your answer.
Okay, so we have a choice between the two fractions to see which one is less, 5/6 or 5/8. Well, if we look at the scarf model, we know that the top model showed us that 5/6 of this whole scarf was orange. And if we look at the second scarf, we know that 5/8 of that scarf is orange. You can visually look at the two pieces, the two sections of the whole scarves. We can plainly see that the scarf with 5/8 that is orange is a lot smaller or a lot less of the whole than the scarf that is labeled 5/6 orange. Now, if you look at our fraction strips use the red strip as our whole. So that's our whole scarf. And if we look at the second strip, this strip is actually a strip that is showing 5/8. If we were to take and create a whole, I'm going to steady my pen, friends. Oops. Using a weird mouse. This time. And we just need to visualize that the rest of these is broken into. All right, so that would be our whole. And then, of course, our 6, we just would need to come out a little bit more. Create our whole. And so we know that 5/6 of this whole is shown here with 5/1/6 pieces. So if you look at the two models, we know that the whole or the strip or the scarf that represents 5/8 is showing less than 5/6. So we're going to click on
5/8 is less than 5/6. You can compare fractions that have the same numerator by reasoning about their size. What you write. Justify the comparison using symbols or words. 5/8 is less than 5/6. If the two fractions have the same numerator, the fraction with the greater denominator is less than the other fraction. Why is the fraction with the greater denominator less than the fraction with the smaller denominator?
good question. So if we look at the denominators, we know that 8 is the denominator for 5/8 and 6 is the denominator for 5/6. Generally speaking, we know that 8 is a larger number than 6. But why would this fraction that has the greater denominator be less than the fraction with the smaller number? Remember, they both are showing 5 parts of the whole, but their denominators are different. Why would 5/8 be less than 5/6? We need to look at how these pieces are partitioned. As you can see, we have to cut the whole for 5/8 into 8 pieces. And we have to cut the whole for 5/6 into 6 pieces. So the more pieces we have, the smaller the pieces.
Because the greater denominator means the whole is divided into more parts. As the denominator gets bigger, each part gets smaller. Now you know how to compare fractions with the same numerator.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so now we're going to do some practice. So if you have your packet with you, the next 2 practice questions are coming out of page 159 in your packet. And I'm just going to kind of go over them really quickly so that you can have time to practice on your own. So if you can see, number 2 has a model of one whole. And we look at our equation right below it. And our equation, we have to compare 2/8 with 2/6. So that means we have to determine, is 2/8 greater than, less than, or equal to 2/6? What do you notice about the 2 fractions? Well, if you look at the 2 fractions, they have the same numerator. So that means for every whole piece, we had to focus on only 2 parts of that whole. Now, let's look at the 2/8. So if we look at it as a whole, we know that 2/8 is 2 parts out of 8 equal parts. Okay? If we look at 2/6, we know that 2/6 is 2 out of 6 equal parts. If you look at the part for 2/8 and the part for 2/6, you can see that 2/8 is less than 2/6 as part of the wholes. Okay? So 2/8 is less than 2/6. Okay? We will try another one. This time it'll be number 4 on page 159 that's in your packet. Now this time they left us with just the whole. So that means we're going to have to do a little bit of work. So if you can look at your equation, you notice that it says 2/3 is greater than or equal to, here's our comparing circle, 2/8. So what should be the first thing we do? Well, first of all, we notice, again, that the numerators are the same. So we know that we're focusing on 2 parts of the wholes. So let's look at our first fraction, 2/3. We're going to figure out, maybe we need to draw underneath our one whole strip, a strip that shows 2/3. Let's take this step by step. So first, we're going to draw our strip. Let's think. Does our strip have to be the same size as one whole? What do you think? You said yes, you are correct. So now we're looking at our fraction, and we notice that our denominator tells us how many parts we need to partition our strip. So because we have 3 as a denominator, we will partition our shape into 3 equal parts. Thirds are kind of tricky. Okay, so you can get them as equal as you can. Now we also notice that our numerator is 2. So that means we're focusing on 2 out of the 3. So we have 2 1/3 pieces that equal 2/3. So now let's look at 2/8. So again, we're going to draw out a fraction strip. Does it have to be the same size as the one whole strip or the strip that is partitioned in thirds? If you said yes, you're absolutely correct. So now let's look at our denominator. Our denominator is 8. So since 8 is an even number, we should be able to partition this very easily. And I'm sure you learned this in your math class. Because we can split 8 in half, we should take our strip and we should cut it in half first. So now we have 2 parts. And then we're going to take our 2 parts and we're going to cut those in half. And then after we cut our fourths in half, well, we have 8 pieces. Let's see. Okay. So now let's look back at our numerator. Again, like 2/3, our numerators are the same. So we're only focusing on 2 1/8 pieces, which would mean equal 2/8. So if we look at the section of 2/3, comparing it to the section that's only 2/8, how would we answer this equation? What symbol would we use? Go ahead and jot down your symbol. If you chose the greater than symbol, then you're absolutely correct. How would we read this statement? We would say that 2/3 is greater than 2/8. Look at the model again. 2/3 of the whole is greater than 2/8 of the whole. So now you're ready to work on the rest of the problems on page 159 all by yourself.